Back to Olympia, it looks like the state is proposing a $160 million cut to higher education this year.
It does, yes. Yes.
Speaking of Washington State University, Regent Ted Basler, and I think I pronounced his name right there, says higher education is in a severe crisis in the state.
Well, there's no question. We're rapidly transferring the cost of education. Let me define a term here, because it's an important one. The cost of education in Washington has actually decreased over the last 20 years. That is, the cost that in adjusted dollars, it takes less to educate a student today than it did in 1990. The issue is the price of education. In 1990, the state was paying most of that fee, and today the students, the families, are paying most of that fee. That's the crisis. We are at a time when we have to, for our economic health, for our social health, increase the number of graduates. We are transferring the responsibility for the payment of that to the families and to the students. It's the absolute wrong public policy. But it's the one I think the legislators find themselves trapped into because the revenues are shrinking.
And they've got demands for K-12 education too, with Supreme
Court.
Well,
and K-12 education has greater protections than does higher education. There's an increased demand for health and social services because the economy is in trouble, so there's more people on those roles. The cost of those services are going up. So one of the squeeze points in the budget, one of the true discretionary areas of spending is higher education. It's also one in which they know they can make the costs up by raising the fees. So it doesn't make sense to really think about a health program where you would cut state support for a public health program and raise the fees. The people don't have those fees to do, so we have that ability. So they're really looking at higher education as a revenue-generating activity, and that's very unfortunate. That's the crisis, I believe.
I think they're waiting for a new revenue forecast, so we're not going to know for a while.
I don't think we'll know much until that February revenue forecast or even beyond that.
But CW is seeking, and I wasn't familiar with this, but just found out about it, a budget correction for 2009?
That's correct. In 2009, and we knew they were doing it, and we couldn't convince them that they were wrong then, that they had made some miscalculations of our enrollment numbers and essentially double cut Central. And then that cut, then the way the legislature typically works is that whatever point you start at, every cut is from that point. So since they made some miscalculations in 2009, they've not corrected that. They've just made their adjustments based on that number. So they've essentially carried that one cut for the last 4 years now, or 3 years. So we've finally convinced them of the error that they made, but now, unfortunately, they've got to go ahead and find that money to adjust our budget upward. Not to recover, we're not even asking that we recover those past costs, just to go ahead and not continue that penalty in the future.
Hoping that things will be okay this year at least.
Correct.
Okay. And what are the prospects for capital funding for some of the school projects?
Well, that won't be, I've not heard any conversation about changes in capital projects in this year. The real issue will be how that goes in the next biennial budget. So that's probably a more relevant conversation about a year from now. So as far as I know, there's no effort to take away the dollars, but we don't have a significant request in now because it's not a biennial year.
Okay. CW is doing some things with its community outreach and efforts and it sounds like there's a breakfast program.
We've been doing breakfast. This is one of we have recently approved a strategic plan, and kind of center in that strategic plan is the concept that because we have become an enrollment-driven budget, that enrollment is so critical to the health of the university, and we know students come here to not just study but to live. Ellensburg is equally important. The support that the town gives our students, our faculty, and our staff is paramount. We also know, we're not naive to the fact that Ellensburg's economy is highly dependent upon the university. So that interlinkage, that interconnection is central to our strategic plan. One of the goals that the trustees took on themselves was improving the dialogue between the town and the gown, as it's oftentimes referred to. So Sid Morrison and myself started inviting, well, the idea that actually Sid Morrison,
and he's
he's the chair of our board of trustees, said, why don't we start meeting with small groups of people that are similar? So we met, say, with service clubs, with the gallery owners, with business owners, with school superintendents. And then we'll just talk about, and then we'll bring them all together. And then after we bring them all together, we talk about some common issues, then they can go back into their little working groups and pair them up with staff at Central Washington University. And that's what we've been doing. We've had a round of the small meetings, we've come together as a large group, and then we've now been kind of then designing projects and then sending those projects out into work groups.
What are some of the projects?
Oh, one project, for example, is having to do with the school system, is early childhood learning. There's a, as brought up by the superintendents, but also by our College of Education faculty. Early childhood learning, before kindergarten, is very, very important to the long-term development of a person. So how do we help parents bring their students up to the point where they're entering in at a level playing field with all the other students? So that's so the school staff of the Cle Elum School, the Kittitas School, and the Ellensburg School superintendents are working with some of our staff to see how might we develop early learning programs to help engage those parents who want that help. That's one example. Another example has to do with galleries and art galleries. Ellensburg, for the town of its size, has a very strong art community with outstanding galleries. The university has a gallery, but it's on campus and it's more of a, if you will, an instructional facility. So how do we engage our faculty and our staff even more than they already are in the artistic life of the community? So should we have another gallery that is primarily dedicated to faculty and student art, for example? And that's an ongoing discussion that they're having.
And are there ideas that are still being developed, or are you trying to work on it?
No, each of these groups, new ideas, they're throwing them around. We'll continue these, if you will, kind of overarching discussions about just problems as they surface or opportunities as we become aware of them, so that and then we're also, and I don't know if this has ever been done before, but it will continue to do it. At the coming Board of Trustee meetings, the Chamber of Commerce will give a formal, as a part of the formal agenda, and we'll give a presentation. And then we met, my cabinet, the Vice Presidents and myself, met with the City Chamber of Commerce, just to talk about ways that we can better cooperate with one another.
What are the benefits for the community and the university by doing this?
Oh golly, it's realizing how I won't say that every faculty, staff, and student lives in Ellensburg, because some live in Cle Elum and some live in Yakima and elsewhere. But the predominance of the people who work and study at Central live in Ellensburg or the surrounding areas. And if you look at the business environment of Ellensburg, if you withdrew those people, it would really have a hard time surviving. Even the art galleries and the music performances, if you took out the energy of the university. So we absolutely have to, I believe we have to talk to each other so that we're maximizing that relationship. So for example, one of the things that the City Council said is they're doing new building codes and do new master planning. Well, they've previously done it largely without the direct input of the university. Well, that's going to affect both of us. So let's talk to each other about what we have a facilities master plan as well that we're revising. Not completely separate of one another, but maybe not as connected as they should be. So those are the kinds of examples that business. What are our student habits? What are we going to do in our CERC that can impact businesses? What are business going to do that we don't want to replicate on campus? So how do we just work to maximize the relationships that we have?